Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What's up, Knight fans? Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon here along with Eric Lopez. And, Elo, you were at that crazy UCF basketball game. Is the roof still on the building or what?
Yeah, it was something. It was fun to be in there. And who would have thought that we would witness history, UCF basketball history, American Conference basketball history, all in one night.
We're going to talk about that. Matt Williams' big night against the Bulls. We're going to talk, and our special guest, we got another guest this time, Eric Lopez. Taylor Young joining us. He's, of course, the radio analyst for UCF Basketball alongside Marc Daniels. Played at UCF for a long time. When I was doing UCF Sports Night, he was a player at the time and just knows UCF Basketball inside and out. And he gives us some great perspective, not just on Matt Williams' performance against USF and throughout the season, but really the entire season in general for UCF basketball. We'll also take a look at women's basketball as well as they continue their run in the American. Also tennis getting underway at the new tennis complex down at the USTA Center. And also some UCF cheerleading news that we'll get to later on in the podcast. Don't forget to follow us at UCF_Banneret. Follow me, Jeff_Sharon on Twitter. Follow Eric Lopez at Eric Lopez Elo. And also look us up on Facebook at blackandgoldbanneret.com. And subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Google Play, of course, iTunes. And if you're on iTunes, make sure you leave us a review. And also tune in. Just recently added on tune in as well. All right, Eric Lopez. So the big story from the week, obviously, the first installment in men's basketball of the War on I-4 for this season. 86-64, the final back on Tuesday, January 17th. We're recording this the night after on Wednesday, January 18th. But, wow, what a performance by Matt Williams, who set about erasing some old records off the UCF single-game record book. He finishes 12 of 23 for the game, 11 of 21 from beyond the arc, 38 points, 11 threes made. That is a new school record. Not only did he break it, he smashed it. The previous record for UCF was 8 threes in one game. That was jointly held by Jason Thornton back in 2000, Brad Traina in 1999, and Harry Kennedy in 1996. Matt's previous career high was 7, which was back against Florida Tech in December of 2012. Mike O'Donnell, Gary Johnson, Harry Kennedy also tied him up at second in the list at 7 there. 29 times a UCF player has hit 6 threes in a game, but he smashes through with 11 three-point makes. He also smashed the record for attempts, which is another thing entirely with the 21 three-point attempts as well. But his 38 points is the tied for the third best ever single game individual point total in UCF's Division I history, tied with 2 performances by Jermaine Taylor back in 2009 against UTEP and then 2008 against Chicago State. Both those games I actually watched the UTEP game live on TV and then was working camera for the Chicago State game. Mark Jones had 42 in a game in 97, and in the Division I era, 45 is the record by Jermaine Taylor against Rice back in February of 2009. I remember watching that game very well. It was an unbelievable basketball game. Of course, Bo Clark is all over the record books if you include UCF's pre-Division I marks with he's got I think 5 out of the top 6 performances Bo Clark does, including 70 in a game against Florida Memorial way back in 1977. But this is about Matt Williams, man. What an unbelievable performance. You were there. What was it like in that arena?
It really was amazing. First of all, I want to get to the Jermaine. You were the Jermaine Taylor games. I got a couple quick tidbits on that. The Chicago State game, was that the one where he had the famous, I think it was a 360 dunk in that game? It was one of the best dunks in the
It seemed like every game that was that 08-09 season where he just went off. He averaged 26 a game that year. That was a senior season. Every game he had one highlight dunk, and sometimes they all go together, but I think that was the one.
That was I remember watching that because I was not at the game, but I remember I was listening to Marc on the radio, and he went nuts calling that. And then the funny thing about the Rice game, I was calling the UCF softball game that was up against that basketball game. And for those that don't know, a lot of times that will happen where they kind of contrast. And softball, I think, started like at 5:30 or 6, and basketball started at 7. So I did the softball game, and then I head over to the Rice game, and it was towards the end. And the whole arena was just in awe. It was just surreal. They were like, man, I can't believe I just saw that. What Jermaine did. I'm like, wow. And they were talking about Jermaine's performance. I'm thinking, oh, we won, right? And then I walk in and turned out, no, we lost.
We lost that game.
But yet people were in awe of that performance that Jermaine had with 45. I've never seen anything like it, where fans were leaving the building and the team lost, but yet they were still like not even talking about the result. They were just talking about the performance of a player. So I guess the reason I wanted to bring that up first, it tells you how impressive it was what Matt Williams did, and to be in that building to see it. That's the most points I've ever seen any UCF basketball player score since I've been going to basketball games there over a decade now. We're talking 2003, 2004. I've been going to games on a consistent basis. And it's funny because it kind of snuck up on you because he got off to a slow start. He missed his first 3 shots. And next thing you know, he got it going. And boy, in that second half, when he drilled that 3, when they started to pull away from South Florida, now the attention was, man, where is this going to get to? And he's been remarkable to watch. And I've said this on this previous podcast. I've said it on the radio shows that I do on 1080. One of the reasons UCF's doing so well this year is, Matt Williams, who's had injury issues and his role was kind of much smaller on the last previous years, has played at an all-conference level. And he has made UCF dangerous. You have to take account for him because he can hit it from anywhere. He's hitting them, Jeff, from the logo, by the logo.
It was a night. It was like watching like Steph Curry in that game. That's what it feels like to be in the arena. Out in Oakland when Steph has a game. You mentioned that first half. He missed his first 3 shots. He finished making 7 of his last 9 in the first half. At halftime, he was 6 of 11 from three-point range. He had 20 points. And then he finished that. So talk about consistency. He finished up, obviously, 18 points in the second half, all of them from outside the arc to finish with 38 points. And UCF gets the win against USF. Going away, led by a dozen at the half and never looked back. Of course, USF is struggling this year, fired their coach, Orlando Antigua. They're going to have to rebuild that program from scratch pretty much once this season's over. But to do that against your rival, and I've seen, like I said, I've seen those performances from Jermaine Taylor, saw them up close, because I used to actually be one of the arena camera guys underneath. If you're looking at it from the TV perspective, I was underneath the basket to the left, which was the one in front of the student section, and I've seen the best of Jermaine in that senior year, and he was kind of inside outside, but don't underestimate his 3-point shot back in the day. But this was another thing entirely, and to see this from a guy like Matt Williams, 50-year guy, who, like we've said before, basically said, I'm leaving UCF for my with the new coaching staff kind of my senior year, and Coach Dawkins said, all right, cool, no problem. If that's what you want to do, that's all right. Hang out by the gym, keep yourself in shape, do whatever you got to do, and we'll help you out with whatever you want. And the integrity that Coach Dawkins displayed in that gesture really, I think, shown through to Matt, and he decided to stay. And look at the season that he's having. He currently leads the team in scoring, but he has been just phenomenal, and he continues to get better. Can this keep up like this?
That's a great question, and who knows, right? I mean, why not? And you mentioned that story. Matt Williams was out the door. I had a chance to talk to Coach Dawkins prior to the Houston game. He was on Tuck and O'Neill. You could hear weekdays, 3 to 7, and I happened to be filling in for Jerry that day with Mike Tuck. And I asked him that question, Jeff, about Matt Williams, like what's made him this good this year. And Coach Dawkins had this incredible answer as he talks about the Matt Williams story.
Well, I think it starts with his story. When Matt, when I took the job here, of course, Matt was one of the first young men that wanted to meet with me and said that he wanted to pursue other options. And so, of course, I honored his wishes, even though I said, hey, let's get to know each other first. And he said he wanted, he was looking for a change, and that's what he did. So he actually transferred out to go to Wake Forest. And then, about 3 or 4 weeks later, he was coming by the office. He was working out here every day, and we still allowed him to come in the gym and shoot and to hang out with the guys. We never let him. We let him allow them to do everything that he wanted to do. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, he came back and said, Coach, I think I may have made a mistake. I want to play for you. And I said, would you have me back? And I'm like, absolutely, son. We'd love to have you back. I think the reason he's had so much success is because of that decision. I think the fact that he took ownership of his career, he took ownership of, making a decision to change his mind at a young age. Most people in his situation, even if they thought it was a mistake, would have went along with it. He said, no, Coach, I think I made a mistake. Can I come back? And I think by doing that, he took amazing ownership of himself and of our program at that point. And he's been all in. I mean, talking about a guy who's bought in. I mean, he has 2 feet in with us all the time. And that's why I think he's having the success he's having.
How about that, Jeff? As Coach Dawkins there said, that Matt Williams, by changing his mind, and he made a great point about it there in the interview, a lot of kids, once they decided to transfer, would probably stick with it no matter what. But for Matt Williams to say, you know what, no, I'm going to change my mind. I want to stay. And I think I agree with Coach Dawkins. He's taken ownership of his career, and it's been the biggest factor to the UCF season. A credit to Coach Dawkins, too, for not closing the door of Matt Williams. I think for help, a lot of coaches would have said, oh, you're leaving. Well, don't let the door hit you in the you-know-what. But Coach Dawkins left the door open. He let the assistants work with him, even though he was he was basically going to leave. And it's just phenomenal story that has turned into. And because there's no way UCF would be where they're at right now without Matt Williams. And that's, I think it's one of the things that has impressed me about Coach Dawkins is that he is able to connect with these players and communicate with them. And these players are buying in. And so to answer your question about can this keep up? Yeah, because I think these guys buy into what Coach Dawkins is selling. And Dawkins knows how this personnel. And remember, as good as they've played, you realize this team, A.J. Davis and B.J. Taylor, for example, they've only now played 6 games together. So they're still learning to play together. That's the amazing thing about it.
To put some perspective onto that, and you're right that they're healthy, and when they're healthy, man, this team is looking really good at this point. To put it, Matt's performance in perspective in terms of the total stats, because I love looking back at this kind of stuff. Right now, he's made 73s for the season. The UCF single season record is 103 by Gary Johnson back in 04-05. So right now this season, he's 3 more, and he gets into the top 10 all time for a single season. Matt Williams does. Right now, he's made. I'm actually pulling up his stats on UCFKnights.com right now. He's made 2015, 2016. So 140. They have 148 threes prior to this year, plus 70. So that's 218. Career leader in 3-point makes is Jermaine Taylor at 251. So he's got a shot to unseat Jermaine for the career record this year at 218, 251. I'm doing some quick math in my head. That's 32, 33, right? That's 43 more attempts, 43 more makes. So with 12 games to go, that's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility of Matt Williams being the best three-point shooter in UCF history when all is said and done. And, Coach Dawkins knows a little bit something about pretty good shooters because he had many of them at Duke, and he said that the performance that Matt had against USF reminded him of one particular great Duke shooter that Orlando fans know of quite well.
J.J. Redick. I was fortunate to coach J.J. for 4 years. And, Matt has had those moments for us, be it practice in several games. And it's just good to see. I mean, very rarely do you find a guy that shoots the ball, that well and from that deep. Because he has, I always like to kid him, he has unlimited range, but he really can stretch the floor because of his ability to shoot the ball from that deep, and that really helps us out.
That's some pretty high praise, and looking back at the career that J.J. Redick had, not just at Duke but in his pro career, I really do hope that black and gold isn't the only colors that we see Matt Williams in, because he could be a really good shooter for someone down the line. Especially in the program, as a 6'5", 215-pound guard, that's pretty much just about the same size as J.J. Redick was, right? So, who knows? Who knows what's coming down the line for Matt Williams? But if this continues, this is good news for the Knights. And Elo, look at where they stand in the season right now. The Knights tied for second in the conference at 5-1 in the league. Cincinnati leads at 5-0, but the Knights 14-4 overall, 10-1 at home. They have defended the home court. We were a little worried about that 2-game stretch, against East Carolina and UConn when they didn't play very well, scored under 50 points, but they got the win against Houston. That was big on, at home, winning by 7. Bouncing back after the loss at UConn. Then you get the big win against USF. And now they have a tough stretch here coming up, Eric, where I got, 4 of the next 6 on the road, including some tough matchups at Houston, at Cincinnati, at Memphis. This is a key stretch for UCF coming up now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this is where you find out where this team is going this year.
Yep. I'm hoping that we didn't see the peak. I'm hoping that we have yet to see the peak.
It's not even a question of a peak. It's a question of, okay, can this team, for them to have a shot to even make the NCAA tournament, this is the stretch that will decide that, because this is the quality teams now you're playing. Tubby Smith in Memphis is playing very well. UCF said historically, if had not had success in Memphis, they've never won in that building. SMU is arguably the second best team in the league. They're on their way to the NCAA tournament. I was there on Saturday. That was a high level game. They got one of the best players in the conference in Gray, who could easily right now be in contention for Player of the Year.
Yeah,
so
he's a problem.
They had no answers for him on that Saturday game either. I mean, that was a high quality game. So if this is, these are the tough games. These are the games that now we find out, is this team an NCAA tournament team? Is this team an NIT team? Is this team a CBI team? Is this the team that can compete to be the third or fourth team in the American Conference? Or is this a middle-of-the-pack team? This is the stretch where we find out about that. And, that's the good and the bad of a league of the American, is it gives you opportunities to play yourself into NCAAs and NITs. The negative is that it could also play you, back down to earth. So, I'm fascinated by this stretch. This is the stretch that will define the season, in my opinion, one way or the other. When we talk again and, we look back in late March and April and say about the season, it's like, well, this team accomplished this based on this, how they did in this stretch. Or, man, if it wasn't for this stretch, they could have done, that's to me what this is going to be about, and we'll learn a lot. And I think the guys are up for it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they respond. I know they weren't pleased with their last performance on the road at UConn, but UConn started to turn things around, and that's not an easy place to play. But, that's the American Conference. You're going to have to beat some quality teams if you want to go places.
Yeah, no, and that, I think they've proven that they have a shot to do. And I like to see how this next road stretch is going to come up. All right, so we wanted to get a little bit more depth on UCF basketball right now. So who better to talk to than the radio analyst for UCF men's basketball, Taylor Young. Of course, you guys know him as the former guard for UCF. Started his career under Kirk Spiraw, finished under Donnie Jones, played alongside such great players as Jermaine Taylor. Back in the day, also Mike O'Donnell. Isaiah Sykes kind of came in sort of at the end of Taylor's career. He was in there for the Marcus Jordan, A.J. Romsa days. And he just does such a great job on the UCF broadcast with Marc Daniels. And we were lucky enough to have him on to talk a little UCF basketball after this historic game against USF. And without further ado, here is our discussion with Taylor Young. And joining us now is the radio analyst for UCF men's basketball, former UCF player, local kid from Orlando himself, Taylor Young, joining us for the very first time on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. What's up, T.Y.?
What's going on, fellas? I appreciate you having me on.
We appreciate you making time for us, brother. So let's start out with the big news right now, based on last night's game against USF. Obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday night. And, Matt Williams, man, a school record, 11 three-pointers, 38 points. You had a front row seat. Have you ever seen a performance like that up close?
Not quite like that. I've been around some great performances. I was talking on the radio last night, being a part of those Jermaine Taylor teams and played with some great players. Some of those nights that he'd get hot, you'd kind of just take a seat and just pass him the rock, run plays to him, and you just knew that you were witnessing greatness. And it just felt like that last night. You knew you were watching history. And what's amazing about it is he started 0 for 3. And so, you talk about the green light he has and the confidence he has. And it was phenomenal to watch. And I was so pleased with, his teammates. Those guys knew it was his night, did everything they could to get him the basketball. And it couldn't happen to a better young man in Matt Williams. So I was thrilled for him.
When you're out there
11.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say 11 threes. Let's not lose the fact 11 threes, a school record. And I've been thinking about it since I saw it in person. You play with some great shooters. You're a good shooter. I mean, where does he rank as far as best shooters you've seen play wearing the black and gold?
Well, and I texted Mike O'Donnell this last night, and I'm sure we'll disagree. And I actually think Mike O'Donnell's one of the best shooters in the history. You'll see him in the record books just about everywhere as far as three-point field goal attempts, which he held that record, which I don't know if that's a good record. He shot 16 threes in a game, which he hit 6, which is, still good. A lot of made threes. But, Matt Williams broke that with 21 three-point attempts. So, I have to give him, if you talk about pure shooting ability, the way he gets it off, his shot preparation, his quick trigger. Anytime he catches the basketball, you got fans that were yelling at him to shoot the ball 80 feet away from the basket last night, which I thought was hilarious.
It's like Steph Curry, right?
Number one, honestly, as far as what I've seen, because everyone knows he can shoot the ball. It's his 5th year. He's not surprising anybody. So to go out and get 11 makes is just amazing.
Well, we looked it up, and single-game three-point field goal attempts, you're right. It was Mike at Marshall back in February of 2008. Jermaine's up there a bunch of times. Harry Kennedy's up there, a guy played back in the mid-'90s. Gary Johnson tried 14 in the tournament game against UConn back in March of 2005. I remember that game. But in terms of makes in one game, the previous school record was 8, and that was tied. 3 guys tied for that. Jason Thornton, who I remember watching play when I was a student, he was a real sharpshooter back in our A Sundays back in January of 2000. He made 8 threes in a game. Brad Traina, who was a bit before my time, in 99 against Georgia State, and, of course, Harry Kennedy in 96 against Jacksonville State. Mike's up there. He made 7 in one game. Gary made 7 threes against UConn in that game I mentioned earlier. But Matt's previous career high was 6, and he blew that out of the water. When you see a guy who's in the zone like that and you're on the floor, is it hard to concentrate on what you have to do in terms of running the sets? Because I feel like if I'm out there and you see a guy who's hot, it's like you get him the ball, and then sometimes you got to catch yourself because you're like, oh my God, I just want to watch this guy doing this because this is poetry in motion.
Yeah, you start to become a fan, and you fight that. Your coaches are telling you to stick to it, but I watched Coach Dawkins after, Matt was really looking to get the record. You could tell everyone was pulling for him. And Matt had just missed a shot, and somebody burned a timeout. And as he was walking to the bench, you could just read Coach Dawkins' lips, and he just said, "Keep going." And that was the coolest part of the game for me, how bad he wanted him to get the record. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you start to become a fan. You start to look every which way how he's going to get a shot off. It starts to get ridiculous. We saw at the end of the game, he was really looking to get 40, and I think that's why Coach Dawkins ended up pulling him out. But, yeah, I mean, it's just you're watching history, and he made it. And, hey, I would give anything to shoot 21 threes in a game, nevertheless make 11. So that's a shooter's dream.
It's also the tied for third best ever in terms of single game points in UCF's Division I history. He tied up with Jermaine Taylor, 38. You had 38 twice. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I mean, I was going to mention that, but I also want to give credit B.J. Taylor. And I've been impressed with Matt and B.J. and their chemistry in the backcourt playing together. Remember, B.J. didn't even play last year. What have you seen on the court in person that seems like B.J. and Matt really work well together?
Yeah, I think they have tremendous chemistry, and I actually think Matt's played a much different role this year than he did last year. He was more of that support role that would have a big game every once in a while. Now he's one of the clear key scorers and just deadly from anywhere on the court. So I think some of the addition by subtraction with some transfers, I think it helped Matt. And I think, him being re-recruited and deciding to stay in Orlando, that decision really allowing him to, as he's becoming more and more healthy, because he struggled with that throughout his career, being so confident. But BJ last night was, you'll hear the coaching staff talk about as one of his better floor games, meaning that he ran the show. He picked the spots. He didn't wow you with scoring 20 like he has, almost the last 3 games before that. But he got his guy the ball. And what he's getting better at is and one of my favorite things about his game is he'll get by his man and he'll get in the paint and he'll kind of just settle. It's his pace. He uses his strength. He's very low base to the ground, and he'll either kick it and they'll run offense, or he'll make a move and go try to finish at the rack. And he's got a nice little 6 to 8 foot floater. So I really like that because he's got a great pace. And I think Matt just feeds off of that, because on a lot of those drives, when he gets in there and settles, Matt does just an unbelievable job of relocating from spot to spot. And that's where a lot of his threes come. And so, yeah, I mean, those guys should be taking out each other to dinner just every couple of times a week. And I'm sure they're great friends.
Taylor Young joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. One of the things is we look at how the team is, really formed and figured themselves out here in conference play. We got a little nervous when they had that 2-game stretch against East Carolina and UConn when they scored 48 and then 49 points respectively. I thought that UConn game up in Hartford was a bit of a trap, but they got the win against Houston. They get this win against USF, and it feels like they caught the wave again. So what happened after those 2 really bad games that they played offensively that they've now figured out in the last 2?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skills, Jeff, if you can call it a skill as a team, is to not lose a couple in a row, or when you lose one, you're able to bounce back. And I really look at that Houston game, potentially down the road, you'll look back and point to it and say, yes, that could have gone either way. When you start tipping off that game, you circle it the way Houston's been playing really well, got one of the top scorers in the conference. And if you lose that game, do you start to fall where you have the USF game next, and then you have a really tough stretch of games? How's the momentum compared to if you win that game like they did, build confidence, continue that momentum through the South Florida game, and now you have this stretch of games that you go take on the challenge. So I think their ability to bounce back has been impressive. I think you give the guys credit. You give the coaching staff credit. They've obviously got these guys bought in, and they're sticking to the process. But then amazing, Jeff and Eric, as you talk about how thin the bench is, right? I mean, this is not like you have your choice of 10 scholarship players, at hand. You're dealt with injuries to B.J. Taylor along the way, A.J. Davis at times, and it's just been impressive how these guys have weathered that storm and adversity, and now they're kind of coming in their own now that they're healthier.
How have they done that, Taylor? How have they been able to offset the lack of depth? Because that was my biggest concern going into the year. It's like, well, is this team going to wear down in games? But it has not been the fact. And I see Chad Brown's been a big positive as far as inside game concerned. But how have they done it with really no depth?
Well, I think it's guys like that. A guy that I've really enjoyed watching play is Nathan Lang. A guy that didn't even know he was going to be playing a little bit before the season. And he's come in, he's a lot of the times, no one's going to play harder on the court. And he's, for the most part, takes care of the ball, runs the show. And, guys like that, you can't win those games that they have with injuries without guys like that stepping up when their number's called. Georgie Moomin, a guy that's getting more minutes and just finding ways to do that. But Chad Brown, a guy to highlight that. That guy is really coming into his own. We talk about Taco Fall. He gets a lot of attention, rightfully so. But when you talk about some of these games, you have lulls of energy. Maybe there's a couple turnovers. It gets sloppy. You have Chad Brown that just kind of makes some plays, gets some offensive rebounds, makes some moves. I remember in the East Carolina game, he was one of the big sparks, as well as the Houston game. So I've enjoyed watching him play. His upside's tremendous. He's a good shooter at the free throw line when he gets fouled late in games. So I think it's just key guys like that have stepped up in different games. It's been impressive to watch.
Well, a good segue, too, right there, Taylor, because you mentioned Taco Fall and what he's been able to do this season, which, to me, it's like, inexperienced as I am at really watching this game. You've forgotten more about this game than I'll ever know. But the thing that I notice is just the footwork that he has underneath now is like night and day compared to last year, where he was kind of awkward a little bit, looked like his shoes didn't quite fit him. Now there's no wasted movement. Yeah, he had a couple rough games during that stretch, but workmanlike performance last night. 4 of 6 from the field, 10 points, 8 rebounds. He's been the straw stirring the drink, particularly on the boards. What's been the biggest? What's been the biggest thing that has been the improvement factor for Taco this year compared to last?
Sure. I read a story on ESPN not too long ago and about kind of his story, which is amazing. But I think the biggest difference, not only is he a year older and playing basketball and all that experience from last year, because really last year you started playing well at the end of the year and once you get in conference. But I think it's conditioning. And when you look at the interviews that Coach Dawkins has done, they have him on a program. And in the offseason, he's a certainly different body type, of course, than anybody else in the country. So it's got special workouts. But, the minutes he's playing, there's many games this season that he's played over 30 minutes a game. I don't think any of us would have dreamed that that would happen. So it's first and foremost his ability to stay on the floor, because if you're not in shape, you can't stay on the floor. And another thing is foul trouble. He's gotten better being able to stay on the floor and not committing fouls. And I think when you look at his struggles, if you look at the first half of last night, he got in foul trouble, and that throws off your timing. But when he comes back in, he settles into the game. He has a really, really good second half, which I think would help propel his confidence. After a few games where he just didn't play well offensively, I think confidence is key moving into the heart of the conference season. But, I think his teammates too, Mark and I talk about this on the radio quite a bit, is the teammates learning how to play with him. He's such a unique player that you can see the coaching staff on the bench. When he's open, you got to get it to him. Because when he's open, and he's also open when other players wouldn't normally be open, right? You could just kind of pitch it at the rim. So I think not only has he gotten so much better, to his credit, and gotten in shape, but the guys around him have learned to play better with him. And I think Nick Banyard, specifically early on, you'll see him kind of get that post-to-post high-low pass that you'll see. Done a good job finding him.
What's impressed you about Coach Dawkins here, being around the team and being around him here in year one? I've had a chance to talk to him on a couple occasions, and I've come away impressed, and just the way he communicates it with the players, and the players have bought in. What's jumped out to you about Coach Dawkins?
Sure. The little time I've spent with him, he was so gracious to have me up and sit with him a little bit, and just kind of when he first got here, and just to say hello, share my support, and get to know him a little bit. And the first, thing I think about is class. He's a guy that's just very warm, genuine. You can tell he has a ton of integrity, and I really appreciate that about the little I've known him as a person. But obviously, his reputation precedes him and mimics that. And But as a coach, he just seems like somebody that has a very healthy and strong intensity to do it right on the defensive end, especially. You're just not going to be out there not doing the right things or playing as hard as you should. And as simple as that sounds, he's able to kind of hold that standard in his time at UCF and really get that thin lineup to buy in to playing as hard as they can on each possession, whether you're pressing or whether you're in zone or you're in man-to-man. And I think that's the biggest thing that sticks out to me. Clearly, it's fun to think about how impressive he was as a player and having a guy like that has played and coached at the highest level. And I think guys gain confidence from that, knowing that he's done it at every level with his Duke background, NBA background, Olympic background, and all that stuff. So, but more than anything else, I've just enjoyed him being welcome to the Orlando community, and I hope he likes it.
Yeah, the one thing I've really been impressed with the most, and I really wasn't anticipating this, was the improvement that UCF made on the defensive end. Right now, tops in the conference in field goal percentage defense, tops in the conference in scoring defense, giving up just 58 points a game. That's a really impressive look in terms of UCF, and they've done it also by stopping the three-point shot. Teams are only shooting 28% from beyond the arc, and they're tops in the league in rebounding offense as well. So, the defense and the rebounding, sometimes, it's easy for us to think of Duke and the Duke system with Coach K and Coach Dawkins that, was sort of like those, sometimes they'll run these like crazy hybrid read offenses, and that's the exciting part of it. But, boy, this team's been doing it with defense and rebounding the old-fashioned way, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. And what's cool about, you look at those numbers, you say, gosh, how could they be top in the country in those kind of significant categories, especially after, some of the years that we've had previously, we've just really struggled on the defensive end. And Taco Fall, I'll tell you, flat out has a ton to do with it. But it also has to do with kind of the scheme. When you have a shot blocker and a rim protector like Taco Fall, you're able to just do things. He makes up for mistakes. You're able to pressure the basketball. If you get beat off the dribble, a guy like me, 6'1", 6'2" guy who could normally maybe take it in and go to the rack, draw a foul, and finish on a big guy, you're not even going close. You're going in there and shooting a teardrop floater, or you're trying to drop it to your other guy. So teams really have two choices. You defend the three-point line. You make them put it on the floor. And when they get in, they got to deal with a rim protector like Taco Fall. So it's really, teams have to score in the mid-range, and that's tough to do when you're not getting those easy buckets at the rim. That's what makes that recipe for disaster for other teams, and that's why at times UCF, one thing they want to work on is some of these games they have 20-plus turnovers, and that allows teams to kind of stay in games because it gets the easy baskets on the other end. But, man, when they're in the half court, that's a matchup that nobody in the conference wants to see, whether it's Cincinnati, whether it's SMU, because it's just so unique. You don't see it.
Yeah, and what the amazing part is about that? They're forcing them to take mid-range jumpers, which, with the analytics guys, the Kirk Goldsberries of the world will tell you that that's the least efficient shot in basketball. And also, this is amazing to me. The Knights are 9th in the conference in blocked shots. So that tells me that Taco's presence in there is enough to keep guys out of the lane, where even if he's not blocking a ton of shots, he's still in the back of everybody's mind, and they're just staying out of the lane on him.
Yeah, and I'm going to use that stat, Jeff, because I didn't know that. That's 9th in the conference with a guy like him. You just wouldn't think that.
Yeah, 3.7 blocks a game. Cincinnati leads the league with 6.2.
Yeah, it's amazing. But you're right. His presence is felt. And, again, you got guys that can go in there and finish on other teams. But, it's just really tough to finish over him. And oh, by the way, when he goes out or he's playing alongside guys like Chad Brown, which are great athletes in their own right with plenty of length and athleticism. So, and that's one thing, too, about the team. Their overall athleticism, they may be thin and not have the depth that you would ideally have, but they have length and they have team speed overall from the guard position, from A.J. Davis, Tank Effiani, Matt Williams. Those are all guys that can guard multiple positions. And then on the offensive end, they have a mismatch in the post where you see Tank Effiani take advantage of. So I think Dawkins is enjoying that kind of versatility on both ends of the floor, offense and defense.
What's been your thoughts on the American Conference? I mean, now UCF's getting into a really tough stretch where they got to be on the road for 3 of the next 4. They got to go to Memphis this weekend. Got the home game against SMU, who's right now right at the top there competing with Cincinnati. They got to go to Tulsa, does UCF. They got to go back to Houston. You just called that game against Houston. That was a great game that we were at about last Saturday. What's your impressions on the American Conference from what you've seen in person and on television in 2017?
Man, it's tough. And then for a couple of years now, it's been one of the best basketball conferences, in the country. And I think for people in Orlando, as UCF gets better and better and starts drawing more attention, are going to appreciate the kind of games that are rolling through the CFE arena. And, we talk about this stretch of games, and Mark and I were talking about it. I mean, that's one you circle, all the next 4, whatever it is, and you say, wow, not only how far UCF's come as a basketball program to have that kind of stretch of games, but that's something you prepare for. And when you are looking at a conference schedule, the recipe has always been, at least from my perspective and the 2 different coaching staffs that I played for, is you protect home court and you try to split on the road. And if you do those things, you give yourself a chance to win a conference championship or at least compete for a bye in that conference tournament and try to make a run late or early in March. So, UCF's protected home court, in conference, and you hope that they can continue to do that and then steal a couple of these big ones on the road.
As you look at the standings right now, Taylor, UCF's at 5-1 in the conference, tied with SMU. Cincinnati right now 5-0, but the Knights at 14-4 overall with this stretch coming up. Now, let me ask you this. I know I'm asking you to look into the crystal ball, but, this is the part of the season where we're going to start thinking about this. Is there a chance that this team could sneak into the NCAA even if they don't win the conference, or are we going to have to wait and see what happens in the conference tournament? What do you think their postseason prospects are at this moment in time?
Yeah, this is like when you start talking about this stuff, I get worried about the jinx stuff, right?
Right.
It's just too early to talk about this. You never know what's going to happen. I think the good news and one of the benefits of being in a conference like the American is you're going to have the opportunity to play the SMUs, the Memphis, the UConns. Obviously, they have underperformed this year, but those kind of names that can really garner attention if you start to put W's next to that on your resume. And then I think the tournament resume, I think the committee always gives credit to the teams that are playing hot at the end. So if you're able to get to the conference tournament, put yourself in a good position, string off a couple games, and whether you win it or you lose a tough one in the semis or championship, I think that's what you're looking to do, is just put yourself in a position where you're in the conversation and then be playing your best basketball early in March. But again, good news is you're going to have every opportunity because those big name schools and a lot of talent in front of you to where, before, whether it be ASUN, CUSA, you nearly have to play a very, very perfect conference run to really garner that national attention.
You were familiar with some of these places that we're going to, Memphis and Houston, from your playing days and so forth. Do you have a place that you feel that where you play that was the toughest place you ever had to play as far as arena is concerned on the road?
Oh man, it was a tough one. Was Southern Miss back in Conference USA? Obviously not in the American. Memphis, Memphis is a tough place to play. Not in the sense of a true college atmosphere, but just in the sense that the rims are tighter. It's an NBA arena. It's just so professional. And the stage just feels a little bit bigger. And, those threes that you tend to hit with smaller arenas and looser rims tend to just not go in. And Memphis will put those kind of runs on you. So that was always a very challenging place to play. Played at UConn, in January, I think late December. It was like, below whatever degrees. And for anybody who's from Florida, that's really tough. I think in shoot around, they didn't even have the heat on.
Yeah, so it's brutal up there in Hartford in that arena.
Yeah, brutal. So, a couple of those places. Houston, I'll tell you, that's one of my least favorite places to play, too. There's 10 people in the arena. It's dimmed lighting. It seems like the floors aren't mopped every time you play there. But it just kind of lulls you to sleep. So you really have to be cautious, depending on which venue and where it hits you in the conference schedule, that you don't get caught sleeping and you bring it.
That is fantastic.
That's great.
That is fantastic. That is great. One last thing. You obviously been broadcasting with Marc now. Just how did you get into broadcast? Was that something that was in your mind after you've done playing? I mean, give me the story background here. How'd you get into the broadcasting? Obviously, you've been doing it with Marc now for a while.
Yeah, no, Marc recruited me out of middle school. No, I never really thought I'd be doing. I look back on it now. Gosh, I don't know if it's been 5 or 6 years. I know I'm getting older. Graduated in 11. Obviously, played at UCF for 5 years. Developed a relationship with Marc and Mike O'Donnell, a good friend of mine. We're in each other's weddings for Christ's sake. He was doing it at the time, and I really enjoyed. I thought he did a great job. We talked about it a lot, and when he made the decision to go back into coaching and be the director of basketball operations for UCF, there was an opening there, and Marc asked me if I'd be interested, and it was one of those things where he kind of just said, "Hey, I don't know exactly what it entails, but of course I'd be honored and I'd be very interested," and that's where it started. And he's so good on the radio that it really makes a guy like me, the job is a lot easier than it could be. I've learned a ton from him. I think it's interesting. You do so many interviews over the course of your career, especially in college athletics. I was a guy, if you ask my parents, I was a mumbler. I would not, to go to dinner with somebody else, my parents would be like, "Taylor, speak up, we need you." And I'd be 18, 19 years old. So they get the biggest kick that I'm actually public speaking in any capacity. So I think that's just a credit to the cool opportunities that college basketball that can provide. You talk about the NBA and of course, somewhere along the line, you realize that, hey, maybe the NBA is out of question in your basketball career, but there's just so many other opportunities that basketball can provide, sports, college, and especially UCF. So, I'm very grateful, and I couldn't say enough about Marc and the guys that we work with doing the radio. I'm just super appreciative.
Well, we're glad to have you on board here on the podcast, too, Taylor. We appreciate you coming on. Tell everyone out there how they can get in touch with you.
That's a great question, man. On Twitter, Taylor B. Young, B as in boy. Follow me, and I don't put out as much as good stuff and content as you guys, but I promise I'll work on it. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I will just encourage the people listening is give UCF basketball a chance, give us another chance, and it's one of the most exciting times, in my opinion, since I've been involved, and I do think that this roster this year has some great potential to do some stuff this year, but next year there's a tremendous upside. So keep doing what you're doing, guys, and it's good speaking with you.
We appreciate you, Taylor. We'll try and get you back on hopefully before tournament time. What do you say?
Sounds great. Just text me or call me, whatever. I'll be there.
You got it. All right, Taylor Young joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fegley.
This is Trey Strelka with the UCF Nightline Podcast, the original, the #1 rated UCF sports podcast.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's UCF_Nightline and at www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com.
Be sure to subscribe to us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
And when you get sick of listening to these guys, make sure you look us up.
Don't forget, that's the UCF Nightline Podcast. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Scher and Eric Lopez with you, continuing to talk about basketball. Switch over to the women's side, and obviously we're recording this on Wednesday night, January 18th, and UCF women's basketball picks up a victory this evening against East Carolina on the road. Not an easy thing to do. Knights now 12-6, 2-3 in the conference with a 54-42 victory over the Purple Pirates in Greenville. The Knights outscore East Carolina in the fourth quarter, Eric Lopez, 18-7 en route to the 12-point victory. Leading scorer Aaliyah Gregory, 17 points, also 4 assists and 6 rebounds. And she has really come into her own this year on 7 of 18 shooting. Zy Lewis, coming off the bench, did not have the best game in the world, 7 points on 2 of 11 shooting. Usually she's a much better shooter than that, but the Knights in particular hitting the boards 49 to 37, the advantage over ECU. And despite the fact that UCF shot only 32% from the field, they held East Carolina to 31, and they got the victory over the Pirates. So you take a look at the American standings right now for women's basketball. Of course, you can almost basically just cross off UConn off the top and pretend they're not there. UCF right now currently in 6th in the American at 2-3, behind Temple at 4-0 in the league. They've won 9 in a row, by the way, Temple has. USF's at 4-1, tied with Cincinnati. Tulane's in 5th at 3-2, and UCF's at 2-3. So they got off to that slow start after the, right around the UConn game. But now the Knights have won 2 in a row on the road, at Houston and then at East Carolina in the span of a week. So 2 big road wins. They come home for 2 home games. Saturday, January 21st, coming up against Tulsa. I'll be on the PA mic for that one, by the way, Eric Lopez. Before the Tuesday night game. Yeah, I know. I'm excited. Before the Tuesday night game against Cincinnati coming up on January 24th. Interesting look there, I think. I like what Coach Abe has done with the lineup. We talked about being a little bit versatile, maybe, and credit to Zy Lewis, the senior, who says, I'll do whatever you need, Coach. She comes off the bench and provides a spark when she can. Didn't have a good shooting night against East Carolina, but I like the unselfishness with this team and in what they've shown. They've bought into Coach Abe, and I think it's starting to come to fruition now in conference play.
Really is. First win ever, by the way, at East Carolina.
Really?
Ever.
Wow.
For women's basketball. Yeah, how about them, Stan, huh? They've never won there. That has been a tough place for this program to win. And so another first for Coach Abe. Add that to the list. And, this team wins with defense. You mentioned the rebounding.
Interior play. She loves to dominate the paint, Coach Abe does, and this team has been doing that of late.
And what she wants is she wants her team to be physical, be tough, and they are. I mean, there's no question about it. They're improved from last year there. Defensive-minded team, win first, and it's a good win and a good bounce back, too. Remember, this was a lengthy road trip. You didn't know how they were going to respond. They lost at Cincinnati after the UConn game, and you're like, where is this? You lost a tight home game. Well, they win at Houston, and they win at East Carolina, and now you're 2-3 coming home for the game you're calling PA, no pressure, on Saturday, and then you get a rematch with Cincinnati on Tuesday, the 24th, the game that'll be televised on the American Digital Network like the ECU game was. The difference is yours truly, by the way, will be calling play-by-play for that one. So
come over and say hi.
Yeah, please do. Seriously, just like people did at volleyball, which when I did the game with Aaron Campbell. I'll be working with Despina Barton, who works locally at Spectrum Sports. So, look, I'm impressed. The team's playing well. I'm actually going to head out to that Saturday game myself, Jeff, and to kind of get a closer look, and hope to talk to Coach Abe afterwards. But, we spent talking so much about what the amazing job that Coach Dawkins has done, but I think Coach Abe has done a heck of a job herself with this team. They've got a shot to have a winning season themselves, and compare where this team was the last couple of years. That's amazing.
Yeah, total credit to the players, who've really bought in very quickly, and she's putting them in the right position to win. So, and this is a fun team to watch because they play intense basketball, in particular on the inside. Love Tolu Omokore. She's just been, she's so much fun to watch. I wish that there was a stat sort of column for things that don't show up in the stat sheet. She would lead UCF in that category every time out. So. This is a good basketball team again. You got that Tulsa game coming up, which is going to be big, and then also Cincinnati. So make sure you keep an eye on UCF women's basketball as well. At 12-6 right now, and 6-4 at home as they head right through the meat of the conference schedule with some big games coming up. All right, so say that again.
12-6. Just put Let's not act like 12-6. Now, no big deal. This team was 7-23 last year.
Yeah.
Think about that. Isn't
big
that amazing? It's phenomenal, unbelievable. Wow.
Credit to Coach Abe. She gets my vote for Coach of the Year in the American. If it's the Gino Auriemma Annual Coach of the Year award, goes to Coach Abe, no question. So. All right, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about this. Let's talk about tennis real quick because we got speaking of turnarounds, right? Men's tennis 3-0 start in the new U.S. Tennis Center down in Lake Nona, and what a start it was! Last Saturday, January 14th, they knock off Texas Tech 4-3. Huge celebration after that match. We saw some of it on social media. It was great. The next day, they come back. They beat the University of New Mexico, the Lobos, 4-1. And then 3 matches in 3 days. Monday, January 16th at high noon, they knock off Pac-12 competitor Arizona at home 7-0. Swept them. So John Roddick's UCF men's tennis team is off to a 3-0 start. They've beaten a Big 12 team and a Pac-12 team. They've got SEC Auburn coming into town on January 22nd, Sunday. They're off to a really, really good start at the USTA National Tennis Campus. And couldn't have scripted it better if you're John Roddick, huh?
Yeah, first 3-0 start for UCF men's tennis since 1999.
That's a long time.
Think about that. I mean, this guy
and
is
against the competition that they played this year too.
Yeah, if you weren't a believer in the hype before, you have to be now. The guy, I told you, he's one of the reasons why he's one of the top in the industry, and it's allowed. I mean, to beat a Texas Tech team that's very good, Arizona. I mean, you know, and I know in talking to him back in the fall, he was excited about the new players he had coming in right away. He had some transfers coming in and a freshman coming in that he liked a lot. So. And he, remember, in his first year at Oklahoma, they weren't a winning program in tennis, and he got him into the tournament that year. So I'm telling you, don't be shocked if UCF competes at a high level this year and maybe contends for an NCAA tournament bid, which in men's tennis, my goodness, would be remarkable. But what a weekend to open that place and to, in a memorable way, to beat Texas Tech. It's something that I don't think anybody that's been following that program and the players and the people will ever forget anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's starting to spill over to the women's program as well. Remember, they started out actually playing the last couple of matches at the UCF Tennis Complex, won them both. Now, they lost to Iowa 5-2 at the USTA campus, but again, this is a much improved team with UCF women's tennis as well. They've got Bethune-Cookman, and this will be fun. Because Sunday, January 22nd, if you got the chance, come on down to the to the USTA Tennis Complex and check it out because it's Bethune-Cookman, the men and the women coming in. The women play at 3 p.m. on Sunday, followed by the men at 5. And it should be a gorgeous night for tennis down there for that Sunday. And actually, by the way, the men, that's 2 matches in one day for the men's team because they got Auburn. It goes Auburn at noon. With the men, then the women against Bethune at 3, and then the men back out there again against Bethune on at 5. So a full day of tennis coming up at the tennis complex, and add a girl to Bridget Gale, who runs sports information and communications for the UCF tennis programs. They've been keeping her busy as well, and we want to give a quick shout out to Bridget for the hard work that she's done in coordinating all that. So. Tennis is underway. Go ahead.
Now,
Eric.
by the way, you got brought up, by the way. I was at the UCF basketball game, and I know this is a shock.
What did I do now?
You agitated some tennis people, actually, with some comments last week. So I ran into some fans of the tennis program.
How did I agitate tennis people last week?
I will explain this, because apparently I ran into some tennis people, people that also work around the recreational places, and they were not pleased with your comments. I guess you made some comment about the puddles at the rec where the tennis courts were for the UCF matches. I don't remember exactly. This was brought to my attention because, hey, I listen to your podcast. You and Jeff, you do a great job. But what did you guys say about, it's not a bad place at all. Some fans, because, people play that, take some pride there. So I want you to readdress for those that are listening, because people listen, Jeffrey.
Okay.
If you want to clarify any comments that you had about the UCF Rec Center there at tennis, because you agitated some people there. Now, they understand obviously that the USTA Center is this way better and all that, but they thought that you took some liberties there with some jabs there.
Okay, I did not jab anybody. First of all right. So put that out of your mind. Number one, all right. I covered UCF tennis as a student, and then working in the athletic department for a number of years. All right, and there's no question that the the UCF Tennis Complex, right next to the rec center. That's been the home for UCF Tennis for a long time, and it's served us well. There's no question about that. If weather got bad, sometimes it was a little rough because, like we said, sometimes, especially early in the spring, right? It's going to rain on occasion. You're going to have to hang out for a little bit, wait for the courts to dry out. Those courts sometimes took a little while to dry out because in some places, and they will admit this, the ground is a little bit uneven. Now, like I said, this place, it served us well for a long time. And there is and I do have a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I have a little bit of sentimentality towards it because I remember seeing some great matches, some great players, guys like Eugene Dolgovic and Blaise Schwartz playing over there, and Jenny Frizzell and Elvie Soreau and a number of players that I know I'm forgetting some, Brock Sakey. I feel bad because I know that there are a bunch of other names that I'm forgetting that I should remember. Alexis Rodriguez comes to mind. Oh man, oh gosh, what I can see her face right now. She went to Winter Park. Her name was Jenna. Oh my God, I'm such a dope, and I should remember that name. But we had some great moments there. There's no question about that. But when you go from the UCF Tennis Complex, God bless it, all it did for us for all those years, and the USTA National Tennis Campus, even they would admit there's just no comparison. No comparison at all. And I think even the coaches would admit that there's no comparison at all between those two facilities. So I'm glad that I was there for the old times. It's kind of like talking about the old arena, right? And the good times we had in the old arena. And it was our place, and it was our little place, and a lot of good memories. But we've moved on to greener pastures, and it's good to see UCF have that sort of facility at their disposal. So I agree. Did that sufficiently clarify everything?
I was caught off guard. Look, I'll be honest. I've only been there like once. I think I was there for a one match once. So I didn't, I was not expecting this when I was at the UCF basketball game. The last thing I was expecting was getting a question about why are you taking little jabs at the tennis courts and puddles. There was no puddles. I was not expecting that. It was good people though. They enjoy the UCF and they enjoy the podcast first of all, and they enjoy big tennis fans. So I just want to make sure, they're like, who said that? And of course it's Jeff Sharon. I would never say anything negative of tennis at all. I'm a tennis guru. I'm the supporter. So I
support UCF Tennis too.
Well, that's good. I defended you there. So I wanted to make sure you clarified your comments. But we appreciate everybody tuning in. But feel free to if any other questionable things, just send it to Jeff. Don't send it to me. That's all.
My apologies, by the way, to Jenna Dorfler, by the way, who Winter Park High School who a great UCF tennis player for a number of years, and also Andrea Yakiman from Columbia, who's a great player for years, and Katie Orletsky too from Titusville. So yeah, had a blast covering those folks. Had a total blast, but you know what? I'm super happy for UCF tennis that they have this beautiful brand spanking new home down in Lake Nona. If you get the chance to check it out, you really should check it out. And this Sunday would be a good time to do it. All right. One other thing that a couple other things, news and notes that I wanted to bring up. UCF cheerleading, nationally competitive. We all know that, right? Excellent job once again this year at Nationals. They finish in fourth. And Eric, what was it? I think that's how many consecutive years they finished in the top four?
A lot. I don't remember exactly the amount of years. I don't have it in front of me, but they've been consistently top 3, top 4 over the last handful of years. I want to say Kentucky won it. They're kind of like a dynasty in this type of thing in cheerleading recently.
Every year, it really is Kentucky's to lose. And I mentioned this, in the UCA competition, you have to not just nail your routine, and I mean nail your routine. And by the way, this is 12 straight years that UCF Cheer finishes in the top 4. 12 consecutive years. So cheers to Linda Gooch for this dynasty of our own. You not only have to nail your routine, you have to hope that they miss theirs somehow. They bobble or someone falls or something. And that's how tight it is. I mean, you want to talk about the margin for error being small in sports? Go look at competitive college cheerleading, because the margin of error, considering the stunts that these people have to do, is so razor thin. And it's amazing that UCF has finished in the top 4 year after year. And cheers to night moves, too, for and competing and showing well at UDA as well this year as well. So, again, job well done by these two squads. Is that the best dynasty at UCF? Are they a true dynasty?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, first of all, let's just throw this out there. I mean, Linda Gooch at some point needs to go to the UCF Hall of Fame, right? I mean, can we just question right away? I mean, that needs to happen. So I want to get that out of the way. But certainly, it's amazing because, as I've been told, but people that follow this a lot closer than I do, schools like Kentucky actually recruit for cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Actually, they have scholarships. They give scholarships, which I don't think UCF does able to or from that regard. So it's pretty remarkable that they've competed at a high level, won national titles, and people always look forward to see them perform, or night moves perform at halftimes of performances as we get near that. And it's funny now, every Sunday night, in January when they do the competition in cheerleading, I mean, I've never seen so many people tweet about it. It's people are definitely notice and take notes. So, yeah, I mean, they're certainly have high standard there. Coach Gooch it's going to be the toughest job is going to be whoever ends up following Coach Gooch there, right?
Good luck with that.
Seriously, unbelievable. It's just remarkable. So it's just credit to them and credit to everybody there. And another successful year. I know they're disappointed internally because they're always shooting for the national title. But as I mentioned, there's some obstacles. You're going up against the Kentuckys who have more resources and more, advantages, I'll say.
Hey, high fives all the way around because they deserve it.
Exactly.
They certainly deserve it. And one more note I wanted to pass along before we wrap up. UCF Track and Field is underway here in the spring. And Knights Track and Field with 11 top 5 finishes at the UAB Blazer Invitational. And cheers to Chelsea Goburn. She's in the weight throw. She won the American Athletic Conference Field Athlete of the Week. Career best 65 feet, 1.25 inches in the weight throw. That's the 16th best mark in that event this season all around across the country. So she's from Sarasota. Great job by her on that. That's 65 feet. And we call it the weight throw. It's kind of like the hammer throw, right? I think it's, you and track and field people, we think of that, old school, we kind of think of that as a hammer throw. But a job well done. Like I said, 11 top 5 finishes for UCF. Janae Bellamy took the win in the 60 meters with a 7.47. She's out of Miami. How about that? Excellent job by her. And then triple jump. Brianna Potter, a sophomore, with a career best 38 feet 4 inches in that. So I want to give a shout out to the track and field folks because they don't get enough love, and I know that for sure. And we have a heck of a track team here at UCF. So here's hoping that things continue to go well for the UCF track team as we, remember, they're kind of in the indoor season right now. Right. Outdoor season takes place in the second half of the spring. So that's going to be fun to look for. All right, Lopez, what do you got working on this week?
Well, I'll be, once again, obviously I produce every day, Tuck and O'Neill, 3 to 7 on Sports Talk 1080, The Team Orlando. This Friday I will be filling in for Jerry. He's off on a day off. So I'll be co-hosting that day and looking forward to that. And then make a note, Tuesday, January 24th, I will be calling the UCF women's basketball game against Cincinnati for the American Digital Network, tip-off at 7 o'clock. I will be calling the game with Despina Barton of Spectrum Sports, so make a note of that. That's free, so you can watch it. You can watch it on YouTube and all other devices that the American Digital Network provides. So looking forward to that, calling the women's hoops there, and what's going to be a very important game, UCF in Cincinnati. So that's kind of what I've got on the slate here coming up here in the next week.
Yeah, what I've got coming up, women's basketball. I will be on the mic for the Tulsa game coming up this Saturday at 1 p.m. That game will be on UCFnights.tv leading into your play-by-play game against Cincinnati. So I will be doing PA for that game.
I'll probably.
Saturday,
I think I'm going to
fun.
I think I'm going to head out to the Tulsa game. I might just heckle you from the stand. I might just heckle, no?
I'll give you. I will call you out on the microphone. I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not, Eric Lopez, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, thanks again, Eric.
I'm sure that'll go well, man.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll keep my job if I do that. All right. So once again, don't forget you can follow us at UCF_Banneret. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon, and you can follow Eric at
Eric Lopez Elo. That's where you get all the latest info.
And also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook as well at Black and Gold Banneret. We've got some more things coming down the pike that I think you'll be excited about. Of course, recruiting is heading down the pike. We don't do recruiting news around here very much, and there's a reason for that. It's because I hate it. But we'll hopefully have some more insight on that in the coming weeks with football recruiting National Signing Day at the beginning of February. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you don't already on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and tune in. And also on iTunes, don't forget to leave us a rating as well. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us what you think we can do better at. Love the feedback here as well. So for Eric Lopez, my name is Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.